So we're looking today at Judges 19 through 21. The Levite and his concubine, as it is often known. And what I'd like to do today is kind of do several things with this. One is kind of quickly go through the story, some of the highlights of it, and then very quickly recap the feminist reading of this story, which is, I think, very valuable in understanding what's going on. I won't have time to go into it in tremendous detail, and I would encourage you, if you want a more detailed lesson on that. A few series ago, we did a series on being God's image, men and women in the kingdom of God, and the very last lesson examines this text through that feminist lens. And so I would encourage you, if you're interested in that, to go back and take a look at that one. What I do want to do today, though, is to kind of give an alternate reading of that story that has come from post-Holocaust Jewish scholars who read this story differently and actually critique the feminist interpretation a bit for some of the things that it can lead to. Okay, but I think I've said this before in classes. I have never come closer to deconstruction than reading post-Holocaust Jewish theologians. They are brutal. Brutal. And this is a text that they read that, for me, was actually very helpful for seeing some new things in the story that perhaps don't always come to the surface. And then finally, we're going to do a quick recap of Judges. So, Judges 19, verses 1 through 4, starts with, in those days when there was no king in Israel, a certain Levite, residing in the remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim, took to himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. But his concubine became angry with him, and she went away from him to her father's house at Bethlehem in Judah, and was there some 4 months. Then her husband set out after her, to speak tenderly to her and bring her back. He had with him his servant and a couple of donkeys. When he reached her father's house, the girl's father saw him and came with joy to meet him. His father-in-law, the girl's father, made him stay, and he remained with him 3 days. So they ate and drank, and he stayed there. On the 4th day, they got up early in the morning, and he prepared to go, but the girl's father said to his son-in-law, "Fortify yourself with a bit of food, and after that you may go." So the 2 men sat and ate and drank together, and the girl's father said to the man, "Why not spend the night and enjoy yourself?" When the man got up to go, his father-in-law kept urging him until he spent the night there again. On the 5th day, he got up early in the morning to leave, and the girl's father said, "Fortify yourself." So they lingered until the day declined, and the 2 of them ate and drank. When the man with his concubine and his servants got up to leave, his father-in-law, the girl's father, said to him, "Look, the day has worn on until it is almost evening. Spend the night. See, the day has drawn to a close. Spend the night here and enjoy yourself. Tomorrow you can get up early in the morning for your journey and go home." But the man would not spend the night. He got up and departed and arrived opposite Jebus, that is Jerusalem. He had with him a couple of saddled donkeys, and his concubine was with him. And when they were near Jebus, the day was far spent. And the servant said to his master, "Come, let us turn aside to this city of the Jebusites and spend the night in it." But his master said to him, "We will not turn aside into a city of foreigners who do not belong to the people of Israel, but we will continue on to Gibeah." Then he said to his servant, "Come, let us try to reach one of these places and spend the night at Gibeah or at Ramah." So they passed on and went their way, and the sun went down on them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. They turned aside there to go in and spend the night at Gibeah. He went in and sat down in the open square of the city. but no one took them in to spend the night. All right, a lot of city names. Let's do a little geography. Here is a map of sort of the central part of Israel. You can see Jerusalem there, okay, and then Bethlehem is below it. And then you'll notice that little red line, that is a road. Today we call it the Patriarchal Ridge Route. It kind of goes along the top of the hills and makes sort of a natural path of travel. So Bethlehem, Jerusalem, and then you see Gibeah. Then just beyond that is Ramah, and then Mizpah, which we will hear later in the story. And Jericho, just for perspective, is down towards the Dead Sea. Okay, and 2 weeks ago we did the story of Samson. Samson takes place. You see the river, that little blue line that runs through there, in the area of Dan. That's the Sorek River. That's the Sorek Valley where the story of Samson kind of takes place. So we've moved up out of the Shephelah into the hill country that runs through the central part of Israel. Now, anybody know how far it is from Bethlehem to Jerusalem?
6 to 10 miles.
It's 5 miles. It's 5 miles. Jerusalem to Gibeah? It's about 2.5. And in fact, today, Gibeah, the ancient site of what's left of the ancient site of Gibeah, is on the northern, it's like a northern suburb of Jerusalem. Okay, the city's just sprawled out around it. But from the ancient city, where the old city, what would have been Jebus, to Gibeah is about 2.5 miles. And then Ramah is just another mile or so up the road, and then Mizpah is another mile or so from there. Okay, so we are not talking about long travel. Okay, now 5 miles walking with 2 donkeys. Okay, it's not like, what is that? 5 miles was maybe 2 hours. 2 hours walking. Okay, so just kind of a lay of the land. We're dealing with this sort of central ridge, walking from one of these places to the other. So the story continues. Then in the evening, there was an old man coming from his work in the field. The man was from the hill country of Ephraim. He was residing in Gibeah. The people of the place were Benjamites. When the old man looked up and saw the wayfarer in the open square of the city, he said, "Where are you going, and where do you come from?" He answered, "We are passing from Bethlehem in Judah to the remote parts of the hill country of Ephraim, from which I come. I went to Bethlehem in Judah, and I am going to my home. Nobody has offered to take me in. We, your servants, have straw and fodder for our donkeys, with bread and wine for me and the woman and the young man along with us. We need nothing more." The old man said, "Peace be to you. I will care for all of your wants. Only do not spend the night in the square." So he brought him into his house and fed the donkeys. They washed their feet and ate and drank. Classic ancient hospitality. While there, they were enjoying themselves. The men of the city, a perverse lot. I meant to look up that word. I think it's a little harsher than that. I think it's actually a bunch of SOBs, would be a better way to translate it. Surrounded the house and started pounding on the door. They said to the old man, the master of the house, "Bring out the man who came into your house so that we may have intercourse with him." And the man, the master of the house, went out to them and said to them, "No, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Since this man is my guest, do not do this vile thing. Here are my virgin daughter and his concubine. Let me bring them out now. Ravish them and do whatever you want to them, but against this man do not do such a vile thing." But the men would not listen to him. So the man seized his concubine and put her out to them. They wantonly raped her and abused her all through the night until the morning. As the dawn began to break, they let her go. As the morning appeared, the woman came and fell down at the door of the man's house, where her master was, until it was light. I want you to notice the change in verbiage around the man. He's been called the man. He's been called her husband. And now he's called her master.
Is he the Levite too?
The Levite. The Levite. He's also the Levite. Yes. There's a progression in how it talks about him. And here we see her master. Not her husband.
So she's a slave.
Well, that's just it. She's a concubine. She is not a slave. In the morning, her master got up, opened the doors of the house, and he went out to go on his way. There was his concubine, lying at the door of the house with her hands on the threshold. "Get up," he said to her, "we're going." But there was no answer. Then he put her on the donkey, and the man set out for his home. When he had entered his house, he took a knife, and grasping the concubine, he cut her into 12 pieces, limb by limb, and sent her throughout all the territory of Israel. Then he commanded the men whom he sent, saying, "Thus you shall say to all the Israelites, has such a thing ever happened since the day that the Israelites came up from the land of Egypt until this day? Consider it, take counsel, and speak out." Now, there's a pressing question in this text, and that is the woman alive or dead when they leave Gibeon?
There was no answer. Must probably be
Unconscious, dead,
Could be close to death, too.
close to death.
Well, you're gonna make me have to go back and read it. I always thought that she was dead at the doorstep. But don't some translations say that?
The text, the Hebrew does not say she was dead.
Oh, what does it say?
It just says exactly what it says here. She was lying there at the doorstep.
Well, she might have died on the way home.
She might have died on the way home.
You know, bled to death or heart stopped or something.
One thing that some of the rabbinic scholars pick up on is the fact that the word used for knife here, that he uses to cut her up, is a little bit of an unusual word. It's a knife that's normally used for sacrifice. And some claim maybe she wasn't dead. Regardless, she's either dead or she's not. It doesn't negate the horrific nature of the story. What other story does this remind us of? Sodom and Gomorrah. What's the difference?
The city gets destroyed. There was no one that was put out the door. So.
Yeah. Yeah. The event didn't happen in Sodom. Right? They called for, Lot offers to send out his virgin daughters, just like this guy does, send out his virgin daughter and the concubine. And the angels don't let it happen. They blind the men and they all walk out. No such thing happens here. No such thing happens. This is worse than Sodom and Gomorrah.
He sacrificed her. Didn't save himself.
That's what the feminist theologians say. This man saved his own skin. Some of the other things they point out is, when we do a careful close reading of the text, what's this woman's name? She is wife, she is concubine,
Daughter.
daughter. She's given no name. This is the second time in a very short few chapters where we have seen women get sacrificed that have no name. Jephthah's daughter, now the concubine. Who carries out all the action?
The Levite.
The Levites, the men of the city, the Ephraimite, her father, all the action is male. And this shows up better in Hebrew than it does in English because Hebrew makes a difference between male and feminine, masculine and feminine verbs. And so all the verbs are masculine here. The Levite and the Ephraimite, his host, have a problem. How do they solve it?
Sacrificing their women.
By sacrificing, in this case, a woman.
Well,
They
we're
took
talking about all the others that's
Yes,
sacrificed.
yes. Yes, ma'am?
They weren't willing to take an action and protect her. You would think they could have fought for the people that were in the war.
The easy action, well, I'm going to say from a feminist perspective, the easy action is they save themselves by sacrificing the women for the greater good.
That's not unusual. I don't know.
Perhaps not unusual today either. And I will say this story is meant to horrify us. This is not to be a model to follow. Okay?
But what I don't understand is, let this be a warning, right? Whatever he said when he sent the 12 pieces, but he was the offender.
Yeah, if we had time, we could go through and examine. This is always fun to do, is compare how people talk about, how characters dialogue about the narrative that they've just been a part of. And you often see the stories change to meet their needs and make themselves look better. And similar things happen in this story. Yes, ma'am.
I think what we're trying to do is let this be a lesson. If you go back to verses 11 and 12, come let us stop as the city of the Jebusites and spend the night. His master replied, no, we don't go into any city whose people are not Israelites.
Yes.
So they leave because the Jebusites are supposed to be dangerous, and they go to the Israelite city. And that's where the trouble starts.
They go 2.5 miles farther
It's just
to their own
showing-
people.
Yeah, and it's just showing how, I think in today's world, we have to look at it, and are Christians Christians?
Yeah, it's a question of, who are my own people? The Benjaminites, the people of Gibeah, have one answer to that question. It's different from what the Ephraimite, this Levite, seems to think. Okay? Because he's trusting in, no, these people are all part of Israel. We're going to be safe here in this town. And he's anything but. Then the story goes on. After he sends out the 12 pieces, the tribes of Israel sent men through all the tribe of Benjamin saying, what crime is this that has been committed among you? Now then, hand over those scoundrels in Gibeah so that we may put them to death and purge the evil from Israel. But the Benjaminites would not listen to their kinsfolk, the Israelites. The Benjaminites came together out of the towns to Gibeah to go to battle against the Israelites. And what ensues are 3 days of battle that inflict heavy losses on both sides, with ultimately Israel defeating Benjamin, but not without they suffer some defeats of their own. Meanwhile, this is after they've won, the Israelites turned back against the Benjaminites and put them to the sword, the city, people, the animals, and all that remained, also the remaining towns they set on fire. Now the Israelites had sworn at Mizpah, no one shall give his daughter in marriage to Benjamin. And the people came to Bethel and sat there until evening before God, and they lifted up their voices and wept bitterly. They said, O Lord, the God of Israel, why has it come to pass that today there should be one tribe lacking in Israel? So why is the tribe lost?
They've been genocide.
Okay,
Wiped out.
they've just killed a whole bunch of them. Okay, and what else have they done?
Destroy the town.
They burned the towns down. They did something else that's equally important.
They're not going to get their daughters.
Anybody that might happen to be left, they've all vowed they're not going to give their daughters in marriage. Have we seen another stupid vow? Okay? There are actually 3 vows in the whole book of Judges that all involve women suffering at the hands of a man making a stupid vow. The first one is Aksa in Judges chapter 2, I believe, who becomes the prize for capturing a particular city, and she's given to a man, but she's also not given. They've not been given any water in their allotment, so she's got to go to her father Caleb and say, "Hey, give me some water." Right? You've not given us a land with water. That's the first. Then Jephthah's daughter, and now this one. And then it says, then they said, "Is there anyone from the tribes of Israel who did not come to the Lord to Mizpah?" Turned out that no one from Jabesh and Gilead had come to the camp, to the assembly. For when the roll was called among the people, not one of the inhabitants of Jabesh and Gilead was there. So the congregation sent 12,000 soldiers there and commanded them, "Go, put the inhabitants of Jabesh and Gilead to the sword, including the women and little ones. This is what you will do. Every male, every woman that is laying with a male, every male and every woman who is laying with a male, you shall devote to destruction." And they fought among the inhabitants of Jabesh and Gilead. And they found among the inhabitants of Jabesh and Gilead 400 young virgins who had never slept with a man, and brought them to the camp at Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan. Now, their solution to the problem that their vow has created is and capture 400 of them. Okay? The solution to the rape of 100 women leads to the rape of 400 more.
Death of downtown.
Yes, plus it doesn't know how many people. But wait, there's more. So the elders of the congregation, they found there aren't enough wives, even with the 400, which makes you wonder, how many people did they kill before? They really didn't wipe them all out, because there's still a bunch left. So the elders of the congregation said, "What shall we do for wives for those who are left, since there are no women left in Benjamin?" And they said, "There must be heirs for the survivors of Benjamin, in order that a tribe may not be blotted out from Israel. Yet we cannot give any of our daughters to them as wives. For the Israelites had sworn, 'Cursed be anyone who gives a wife to Benjamin.' So they said, 'Look, the yearly festival of the Lord is taking place at Shiloh, which is north of Bethlehem, on the east of the highway that goes up from Bethel to Shechem, and south of Lebonah.' And they instructed the Benjaminites, saying, 'Go and lie in wait in the vineyards, and watch when the young women of Shiloh come out to dance in the dances. Then come out of the vineyards, and each of you carry off a wife for himself from the young women of Shiloh. And they go to the land of Benjamin. Then, if their fathers or their brothers come to complain to us, we will say to them, Be generous and allow us to have them, because we did not capture in battle a wife for each man. But neither did you incur guilt by giving your daughters to them.' The Benjaminites did so, and they took wives for each of them from the dancers whom they abducted. Then they went and returned to their territory and rebuilt the towns and lived in them. So the Israelites departed from there at that time by the tribes and families, and they went out from there to their own territories. And they lived happily ever after. Do you see the brutality? And one of the feminist readings of this play out is that the threat of violence against the Levite leads to the rape and murder of his concubine in civil war. The solution to the concubine's death and a foolish vow by the men results in the rape of 400 women plus countless others, as well as the execution of many more. And no woman has a voice in this entire narrative. Not one. All these women sacrificed for the greater good of the community. Now, I am 100% aligned with this feminist interpretation. But it is not without issues. And other scholars have looked, and particularly post-Holocaust Jewish scholars who've looked at this. One in particular is a woman named Katharina von Kellenbach, a German. She teaches in the United States now. She's a Jewish theologian, and her focus is around the Holocaust and its impact on Judaism and on Jews. And she has made the comment that what you see when you look at the data from the Holocaust is that generally it was the women and the children who were sent to the concentration camps first. The men, they determined, were valuable for labor, and therefore women and children first. But what's more is that oftentimes these women were abandoned by the men, even their own families. So knowing effectively that if I don't agree to send them, then I'm going to die too. Therefore, the net good is that they go and I don't, in hopes that they survive. And so she actually tells the story from a book by a man named Kalel Perechodnik. He wrote a book in 1943 called Am I a Murderer? Kalel was a Jewish police officer in the Warsaw Ghetto. And his job, among other Jewish police officers in the Warsaw Ghetto, was to decide who got put on the trains to go to Auschwitz. And his wife begged him early on, you need to get us forged Gentile papers, what are called Kennenkart, so that we can get out of here. This is not going to end well. And his reaction was, no, my position protects us. We're good. We're good. And that worked until towards the end, he was forced to put his wife and daughter, 2-year-old daughter, on a train to Auschwitz. And he describes in quite a bit of detail, how he could not even look at his wife when he put her on the train. He could not look at his daughter because of the shame that he felt for not doing something sooner. And so the question that gets asked then is, what do you do when you're faced with a choiceless choice? When it's either all of you die or some of you die, there's no right answer. What do you do? And what Katharina von Kellenbach says is that the Nazi concentration camps were a proving ground for choiceless choices. And what they did is they resulted in, for the men left behind, shame, a loss of dignity, and self-respect. And the other thing she claims is that the feminist reading, as good as it is, can be anti-Semitic. Because what it does is it demonizes all of these Israelite men and turns it into a Jewish problem. And she argues that the Levite, the woman, and their host are all foreigners or others in the eyes of the Benjaminites because they're not from Benjamin. They're from Ephraim and Judah. And that the men of Gibeah force this Levite into a choiceless choice. And that effectively the woman is a stand-in for him. Their goal is to dehumanize the Levite. Her brutal gang rape feminizes him because he can do nothing to stop it. And they effectively rape him too. And she argues that the Levite's response, much like Kalel Perechodnik's, demonstrates its effectiveness. When it's time to leave, She's lying on the threshold, and he says, get up. She's like, he can't, in her mind, he can't even look at her. And then he takes her back. And his primary concern is this. He commanded the men, after he cut her up, saying, you say the Israelites, has such a thing never happened since that day, and the Israelites came up from the land of Egypt until this day? Consider it, take counsel, and speak out. What's his motivation?
Revenge?
Revenge. Revenge for what?
For him being defiled.
On that, I think the post-Holocaust Jewish theologians and the feminists would agree. It is not so much for what has been done to her, but for what it has done to him. And the choiceless choice he had to make. Did he have to cut her up like that? Yeah, so did he have to cut her up like that? That's a real question. That in what Sellenbach says is that was part of his reaction to the dehumanization that he suffered. Because he's been dehumanized, cutting up his concubine, whether she's dead or alive, is a demonstration of that dehumanization. It's a horrific thing to do because of what was done to him.
The question, but
Yes, ma'am.
wasn't a choiceless choice though? Like Paula said, they could have fought. He could have not given her or not given anybody.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly. And she Sellenbach admits that, right? That the choice is a little different for the Levite. Did he have to throw her out, or could they have just barricaded the doors and held their own? That's a good question. It would seem in his mindset that they couldn't. She argues he really did have a choice, right? But it's very similar to the sort of choice that many Jewish men had to make in dealing with what do I do with my family, right? Do I hide? Do I trust that we'll be okay in these camps? What do I do? All of those things, they become choiceless choices, and the effectiveness of them is that they're not just about victimizing the women, it's about dehumanizing the person that has to make that choice. And incidentally, this is not a story about homosexuality. Okay? These are not all gay men in Gibeah. This is about dehumanization and violence against an other. Okay? This is like prison rape. Okay? And even Sodom and Gomorrah is not a story of homosexual men. Okay? And by the way, the prophets back that up if you want to go read Ezekiel. Okay? But here, they're both victims. Her brutal gang rape is designed to dehumanize him. And like the Holocaust, Jewish theologians ask, when reading this story, where is God in this violence? And this is actually the second time we've had to ask this question in Judges. Think about Abraham being asked to sacrifice Isaac. He raises the knife, and what happens? Angel stops him. Jephthah goes to sacrifice his daughter. Where's the angel?
Not there.
It's not there. Where's God in that story? God is silent. Sodom and Gomorrah. What happens? Lot and his family are saved. Angels step in, fix the deal. Here, Israelite on Israelite violence against this Levite and his concubine? Where's the angel? It's not here. And it's the same question that many Jewish theologians ask in the Holocaust. Where is God in the murder of 6 million Jews? Overwhelmingly percentage-wise, women and children. Where is God? And some of them go so far as to say, if your theology cannot account for the burning of children, then I have no interest in your theology. It's a really difficult question to answer.
I think maybe God may have been saying, where is my Israel?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question, and actually that leads really to kind of the next point. Where is my Israel? And so
We
here's
didn't hear
other
the
thing that's kind of-
question. We didn't hear the question.
Oh, she said maybe God is asking the question, where is my Israel? Okay. Well, we see in the story of Jephthah that God says, look, I'm not going to save you anymore. But then it says they repent, and God says, I cannot bear to see them suffer. Right? And he helps them, he rescues them. Again, what's interesting is all through Judges we have seen this cycle, right? This whole cycle of, they turn away from God, an enemy's raised up, the people cry out, then God raises a judge, the enemy's defeated, the land enjoys peace, the judge dies, and the cycle starts over again, right? It's like this big boulder rolling down a hill, getting worse and worse and worse with every cycle. And what do we have with this story? This is rock bottom, right? There's no judge. There's really not even any idolatry. It's just like the book ends with this horrific story of violence from one Israelite to another. And there's no cycle anymore. The rock is shattered, it's destroyed, it's at the bottom. It is awful. It's a mess. Yes, ma'am.
We were talking about, you brought modern day into the Jews being killed in Germany and stuff. Is it possible that the turning now is that the Israel people are stronger now, they've come back and making a comeback?
My short answer to that question is no. Only because does it really take the killing of 6 million people, women and children, to make someone stronger? Is that a moral justification for doing that? Theologically, that gets really hard and really problematic really quickly. That's the challenge.
They have come back.
Can you repeat and clarify your comment about if your religion doesn't explain the burning of children?
If your theology, this is a Jewish theologian's quote, I can't remember exactly which one it was. If your theology cannot account for the burning of 6 million children, or 6 million Jews, or in this case, the burning of children, okay, I have no interest in your theology.
I don't know if this makes sense, but what came to my mind when you said that was the Israelites and Judah to some extent religious practice of child sacrifice.
Yeah, and which is highly denounced. It is not okay.
Right.
Yeah, it's not. That's never okay. And I think that's kind of what he's getting at here. Is that how do you, if your theology, and really what he's criticizing is Christian theology, right? That says if your Christian theology attempts to justify somehow and make it all right to burn children in ovens, in concentration camps, I have no interest in your theology. It's a hard question. It's a horrific question. And it causes many of them to turn to books like Esther, the book of Esther, which basically, God's not mentioned anywhere in Esther. Right? And so the question is, if God will not show up to save us, then we have to save ourselves. And that is how some Jewish theologians deal with the Holocaust is by reinterpreting Esther to say, maybe the lesson we need to learn is what we see in Esther. And interestingly enough, if you look at the modern state of Israel today, their actions against their neighbors is largely driven out of that interpretation of Esther. And in fact, the latest attacks on Iran that Israel did, what day did they start? They started on Purim, which is the holiday that commemorates Esther. And it was not an accident. They did it by choice. So, there's an epilogue of the book of Judges that says, in those days there was no king in Israel, and all the people did what was right in their own eyes. Now, this is not a positive evaluation. Sorry, libertarians in the audience. Okay? So the question is, how does Judges dialogue with Samuel and Kings?
Well, God does say, and I don't know what chapter and verse, that when they started sacrificing their children like other nations, that never entered his mind.
Never entered his mind, yes.
It never entered their forefathers' mind. So
yes.
he doesn't approve of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why he doesn't prevent it, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the question. The question is approval versus prevention.
Yeah.
Okay, is a question. And the prevention seems to happen more with male kids in the book, in the early biblical chapters, than it does with female kids. Okay, that's an issue. So what do we see in Samuel and Kings?
You see in that Kings, what's interesting is the first king is going to be a Benjaminite.
Yes, hold on to that for just a second. Yeah, it says it's all about kings. And the message is the kings kind of led us into idolatry. And the kings are the reason that we're in exile. And what Judges says, yes, but the only thing worse than having a king is not having a king.
Well, they also go back into that cycle that you had.
The cycle, exactly. The cycle with the kings is kind of similar. Now, here's the postscript. When you get to Samuel, okay, Saul is the first king. Where is Saul from? He's a Benjaminite. What else?
It's good looking.
Well, he's tall. Yeah, he's tall, maybe good looking. Where else is he from?
Gibeah.
He's from Gibeah. He's from the same town where this started. And incidentally, if you look, what happens? There's a guy that captures a city on the other side, Jabesh Gilead. Okay? And what does Saul do when he hears about it? He takes his ox and he cuts it into 12 pieces and sends it out to the tribes of Israel to call them. Now, we just read this story about women being taken from Jabesh Gilead. Instantly, where are Saul and Jonathan buried when they die? Jabesh Gilead. Now, why? Saul's mother or grandmother or great-grandmother may have been one of these women from Jabesh Gilead if you follow how the text goes. And what does Saul's name mean? Shaul. Asked for it. Asked. Sha'al means asked, to ask. So his name effectively means asked for. You asked for it. The first king comes from this city where the most horrific event in all, I would argue, in all of the Old Testament happens. And that's where they picked the first king. And his name is you asked for it. Now, Judges reflects a downward spiral in the tribal chieftain period of biblical Israel. As we looked at earlier in the book, what kind of leads them into this sort of cycle is Because they didn't take some of the big strategic cities that control the trade, they have to make economic alliances to survive by marrying their sons and daughters to other locals, and the result is they serve other gods. Economic decisions have theological consequences, even today. And the only thing worse than having a king is not having a king. That's what the Judges shows us. And the book starts well and just continues to roll downhill until we get to this final horrific story that ends in not even a cycle at all. It's just bad from start to finish. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to suggest that you maybe left off one point.
Okay, what point did I leave off?
Judges starts with, Judges is all about the fact that the Israelites did not do what God told them to do.
Is it about that they did not do what God told them from the beginning?
He told them to take the land and leave no inhabitant of it. And they didn't.
They did not take the, yes, they did not take the land, and in particular, they didn't take these key strategic cities.
But they
Right.
didn't take the land and wipe out the other inhabitants. And
Yes, and I would argue that that
violence,
wiping
you
out,
say?
yeah, the wiping
Yeah.
out, I think that is hyperbole. I think it's conquest language because there's plenty of other texts that say, hey, the foreigner living among you, be nice to them, right? The issue is,
That they weren't living there among them yet.
no, but then when they are living with them,
Different
it's,
thing.
yeah, it's clearly, there's a debate back and forth that you can take on that. The bigger issue, I think, is where those people were living and what they didn't take. Because they didn't take these key places, it leads to all the, you can predict it from chapter 2. Oh, there's going to be problems. There's going to be problems. And the book just described one after another until in the end, it's not even the foreigners that have caused a problem. This last chapter, there's no idolatry in these last 3 chapters, right? It's Israel on Israel violence, right? It's a horrible story. And then the book ends and sets you up for the final judge, who is Samuel. All right, we are well past time. Thank you all very much. I've enjoyed the study. We have the summer off for special gathering circles, and